Hi students, hopefully you are having an amazing day. I'm Muhammad Naeem Amin Bhatti and today we are going to discuss the novel by Thomas Hardy. The name of the novel is The Mayor of the Casterbridge. This lecture has been divided into the three major parts. The very first part we will discuss the Thomas Hardy as a writer. In second part we will discuss some key facts about the novel and main character analysis of this novel, and in third part we will discuss the summary, themes and symbolism. So let's start with the biography of the writer, The Mayor of the Casterbridge. The name of the writer is Thomas Hardy. If we talk about Thomas Hardy's personality, he was having a universally acknowledged personality as a novel writer. Basically, we can say that he has a multi-dimensional type of the personality. He was the poet, story writer, short story writer, a service chapel dealer. Also, he was serving in the service chapel and there in their church, and he was a folklore person. He used to sing different type of the folklores. Also, he was a violinist. He used to play the violin, and actually he was a multi-dimensional person, a poet and a novelist also. Thomas Hardy was born in June 2, 1840 in the village of the Upper Beckhampton, about the 3 miles from the town of the Dorchester in southwestern England. The impression of his early youth, the people, the events, the surroundings, countrysides became part of the subject matter of his Wessex novels and the stories. That's why he is also called the novelist of the region or the regional novelist. The town of Casterbridge itself, for example, is modeled after Dorchester. It's basically a fictional place, is not existing in the reality. Hardy's father was a builder and a stonemason and was by no means a wealthy person. His mother loved reading, and under her care, young Thomas was given the ample introduction to the classics, the folk songs, ballads, and the local stories and the legends. Music was also a common feature of the Hardy's household. His father taught him to play the violin. For himself was the violinist in the church choir and often plays the parties, weddings and any festivals. Music was a great love throughout the Thomas Hardy's life and often figures in his writing. At least 3 important scenes in The Mayor of the Casterbridge also involve the music, especially the music of the violin. If we talk about his education and apprenticeship, the Hardy did not study at the university or college. He formally educated basically from the years that he spent his village schools and lower Buckhamptons, and additional private schooling is at Dorchester, during which he learned the French and German language. When he was 16, his father apprenticed him to a Dorchester architect. His name was John Hicks, and he used to learn different skills regarding the different type of the paintings, like the architectural drawings and the restoration of the churches and the old houses. Indeed, this association taught him much of the local family histories and the folklore. When the day's work was completed, Thomas usually undertook advanced Latin studies and the task of teaching himself Greek. So basically, he was expert in the 4 languages: the Latin, Greek, German and French language. But most of his work is in English language. In 1862, Hardy went to London as a draftsman and worked in the office of Mr. A. W. Blomfield, and architect. He was basically a designer and architect at that time. During this time, he won the number of prizes for essays, and he began to steep himself in architectural and art studies, classic literature, contemporary poetry, fiction, and the other short story writings, etc. In 1867, he returned to Dorchester to better position as the church restorer, which his former master has begun to write more steadily. If we talk about as a novelist, Thomas Hardy has worked from 1867 to 1895. From this time on, Hardy wrote the poetry and novels, though he dedicated himself chiefly to the novel from until 1895. At first, Hardy published anonymously or unknowingly with no name, but as interest grew up in his work, he began to write under his own name. His novels were published from the most part in the serial from a well-known magazine both in the England and America. His major works include Under the Greenwood Tree 1872, Far from the Madding Crowd 1874, Return of the Native. One of his masterpiece novel was published in 1878. The Mayor of the Casterbridge, that is also a part of our coursework, that was published in 1886. The Woodlanders was published in 1887. Tess of the Obrivilles was basically published in 1891, and Jude the Obscure was 1895. His works were highly acclaimed, and the success and Far from the Madding Crowd enabled him to give as per the reputation as an architect, and basically he was famous at that time, but he also encountered literally hostility. Jude the Obscure received such a harsh criticism that Hardy gave up the writing of the novels entirely and dedicated him towards the poetry. As a poet, he spent the years from 1895 to 1928 until his death. Hardy retired to his house in Dorchester, and there he turned the poetry almost exclusively. Before his death, he completed over 800 poems and the long epic drama which was The Dynasty in 1908. His first marriage was not happy one, but in 1914, 2 years after the death of his first wife, he married to the secretary, which was his second wife. The remaining supremely happy years of his life were spent in matrimonial devotion and in recent tranquility. The last 2 decades of Hardy's life were increasingly full of the honors. And with the death of George Meredith in 1909, he became undisputedly the holder of the title of the greatest living man and the living legend of the letters. And in 1910, he was awarded with the Order of Merit, that is one of the best awards in the contemporary England. His house, Maxgate, became a literary shrine, and there he received many of the visitors from all over the English-speaking world. He continued to publish poetry well into the 1920s, and even though he was then over 80, he died at the age of 87 on January 11, 1928, one of the best out of best novelists, and the genre of novelist was pretty much mature in his era. That's it from today's lecture. Until the next lecture, it's goodbye from me.